Morning from Vietnam. My name is Lien. Nice to meet all of you today. I'm very happy to share my research findings today. It is about investigating the role of ChatGPT in evaluating student translation competence. As you may know, AI and LLMs has drastically changed or transformed our EFL learning culture and translation training as well. Actually, ChatGPT has been increasingly used for learning as a kind of supportive tools, and in translation lessons, is increasingly important and prevalent. We all know that ChatGPT has the ability to translate different texts with a high degree of accuracy. It also can provide instant lexical assistance, stylistic refinement, and it helps learners to produce translation with remarkable speed and coherence. However, of course, we know that ChatGPT or this chatbot may have problem working with culture-bound texts or any type of texts that are contextually dependent. At our university, Haiphong University of Management and Technology, Vietnam, the translation classes remain traditional. That means learners or teachers remain more on dictionary textbooks than AI or machine translation. However, we all need to acknowledge that the students are increasingly using ChatGPT as their learning tool. Therefore, we would like to examine the impacts of this AI tool incorporation into translation lessons and how much it influences student translation competence. So I would like to start with the concept of translation competence. Maybe authors may define it differently, but in this study, translation competence is the multi-dimensional construct integrating linguistic, cognitive, cultural, and technological skills. There are a number of models that can be used to evaluate translation competence. For example, PICTE in 2017, which examined the bilingual extralinguistic instrumental knowledge about translation and strategic competence. Later on in 2009, Transcom models consider translation competence as a kind of interplay between knowledge, skill, and metacognitive control. There are other models that can be used. However, within this study, we would like to focus on EMT framework. Actually, this framework was invented in 2009 and revised in 2022, focusing on 5 domains: language and culture, translation, technology, personal and interpersonal, and service provision. So in this study, this framework is adapted and we use it to evaluate learners' translation competence before and after the interventions of ChatGPT, and student translation papers are assessed based on 5 different competence: linguistic, intercultural, thematic, technological, and strategic. We all acknowledged the strengths and weaknesses of EMT, and as you can see on the screen. However, in this study, I suppose that this framework can work because we are working with the text, translating from English into Vietnamese and Vietnamese into English, and we focus on the the four main domains as what we stated: linguistic, intercultural, thematic, and strategic. So this framework certainly can meet the requirement. Let's continue with the second aspects of literature review, that is about ChatGPT in translation pedagogy. We can see the benefit of this tool in terms of increasing student fluency, lexical variety, of feedback immediacy. It also can help to promote self-regulation and strategic reflection, because it actually support the student and promote the student to check and revise after using this tool for their translation. For the risk, of course, this tool, as the other kind of machine translation instruments, may be weak in translating cultural nuances, idiom, or connotations. And it also includes certain type of ethical issues like biased, because it is more European style, and it may, of course, reduce the autonomy. So this study is conducted to investigate how much it can impact the student translation competence with a quasi-experimental study with the participation of 60 students divided equally into two different groups, the experimental and the control one. The study lasts for about 15 weeks, that means a semester. The research questions are: what are the effects of integrating ChatGPT into translation training for Vietnamese undergraduates at HPU? And how does ChatGPT integration influence HEMT 2022 Competence Dimension? So the two main data collection instruments are used, which as tests and interviews. For data analysis, the quantitative data were analyzed using SPSS 26 with a descriptive statistic, pair sample test, and independent samples t-test. The qualitative data were thematically coded following Brown and Clark's six-phase framework. And here are the analytical dimensions of the student translation. And on the screen, you can see the interviews for the students to evaluate their opinions regarding their experience of working with ChatGPT and how much it may influence their translation competence. Here below is the results, the quantitative results. If you have a look at these tables, it is clear that both groups improve after the intervention, but the group which is assisted by ChatGPT outperformed. As you can see, when we look at the first category, that is language competence, the strongest improvement in the GPT group, with the mean score from increasing from 3.41 to 4.13, indicating that ChatGPT enhanced grammatical accuracy and lexical diversity compared to the manual translation. The second point is about thematic competence. As you can realize, it rose markedly for ChatGPT users from 3.44 to 4.02, suggesting better coherence and content organization supported by AI scaffolding. For strategic competence, We also can observe the increased of both groups, but the ChatGPT group achieved the higher final means with 3.81 as opposed to 3.64 of the control group. But if we look at intercultural dimensions, we also can realize that both groups get improvement, but the gain remains smaller than in linguistic and thematic areas. So that indicate that cultural nuance still challenging for ChatGPT. We look at the pair sample test. It is clear to see that the largest gain can be observed with 0.72 for the post mean score, and it occurred in the ChatGPT group, indicating remarkable enhancement in linguistic accuracy in comparison with the manual group. For strategic, we also can see that the ChatGPT user shows substantial progress with the improvement of from 0.62 as compared with only 0.39 of the main group. However, for intercultural, we can see the minimal gains or improvement. Let's have a look at independent sample test. We can see the similar results as the other two tables show. So from this diagram, the comparison revealed notable progress in both groups, but the experimental group demonstrated greater overall gains. At the pre-test stage, both states performed at a comparable levels across all the EMT dimensions. But after the intervention, the AI-assisted group achieved substantially higher post-test means, especially in language and strategic competence. Please have a look at the result of the qualitative data. We would like to start with the first dimension, that is language competence. Across all the 5 interviews, students recognize ChatGPT's strong support for their linguistic competence by providing lexical variety and grammatical correctness. Student 1, 2, 4, and 5 noted that ChatGPT removes their grammatical errors and have 5 unknown words quickly and improve their vocabulary use. However, 3 respondents in 3, in 4, and in 5 doubted whether this linguistic accuracy translates into actual language learning or internalization. They admitted that their brain doesn't work hard and they don't remember much, or grammar doesn't improve because they simply copy outputs. Some mention stylistic repetition or repetitive structures, implying that ChatGPT linguistic precision can be mechanical or formulaic. Let's move on to the second dimension, that is intercultural competence. We can see that on the 5 participants stressed that ChatGPT may have problem understanding Vietnamese culture, idiom, or pragmatic nuance. And that is what the student involved in the study admitted. For example, cannot understand much about culture, complex cultural concepts and idioms, or mostly work at surface levels, or struggle with emotional cultural concepts. When we come to thematic competence, students reported that ChatGPT report idea organization, clarity, and coherence, yet they question whether it improves subject matter understanding. And the final dimension, that is strategic competence, the student reported that there are a kind of contrasting strategy. For low self-regulation, student 3 confessed it. I just rely on ChatGPT and I do not check But limited revision for student N4 and N5. They check minor errors and read again and correct small mistakes. For strategic awareness, only student one mentioned varying idiomatic meaning or lexical choice. So, this reflect kind of contrasting strategy. Um, Here below is the discussion. The overall findings indicate that ChatGPT have different impacts on EMT-based competencies of the student. We can realize that the student achieve significant gains in terms of linguistic and strategic competence. However, ChatGPT have limited effects on student intercultural and thematic competence. These findings aligned with the prior studies such as Tran and Lien 2025, Chow 2025, confirming AI influences just the surface linguistic accuracy but not deep cultural reasoning. In terms of language competence, we acknowledge that ChatGPT may help the student to achieve in terms of grammar, accuracy, fluency, and coherence. But there's also one problem, as what the student said, that is kind of pseudo efficiency. The student involved in the study themselves are not sure whether they did make progress or that just the ChatGPT helped them to deal with the translation assignments. For intercultural competence, no significant improvement were observed, and that confirms ChatGPT confirms it limited contextual sensitive, the same as Child 2025 and Bennett 2023. For thematic competence, there are slight improvement, and the student completed task refer to or implies that the student can work quickly, but with ChatGPT, however, this kind of tool cannot understand the message deeply. So from the study, we can realize that the incorporation of ChatGPT into translation should be approached with prudence due to the following factors. First of all, its inability to process text with high linguistic complexity or insufficient contextual information, the uncertainty over whether students improve their translation performance, or that is just a kind of pseudo proficiency. And another point is the student tend to lose their learning momentum, self-efficacy. That means student or learner autonomy is somewhat badly affected. From these obstacles and limitations, we recommend that ChatGPT should only be positioned as supportive rather than substitute tool in curriculum design and development and in translation training program. Those the study have touched upon some aspects of ChatGPT's roles in assessing student translation competence. We would like to examine this chatbot's role in the translation of other domains that should be more sophisticated, such as legal, medical, or literacy. Thank you very much for your listening. Goodbye.